Matthew in New York. Hey, Matthew, how's it going?
What's going on, Matt?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Shane.
Hey.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. It's just wanted to give you a little bit of a background. The topic that I wanted to talk about was how people misinterpret the gender wage gap, and I will caveat it. So, basically, I wanted to talk about the gender wage gap.
Okay.
And just so you know, I became an atheist a couple of years ago, swung very hard right, and then back to center.
Okay.
And one of the things that I kind of haven't shaken is the concept that the gender wage gap is not stated accurately. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' opinions on it, because the way I see it is that once you control for opportunity, education, income, well, not income, opportunity, education, job, at that point, the gender wage gap shrinks to a point where you really can't tell. And
Okay.
I just wanted your thoughts about that.
Well,
when I look at my colleagues, a lot of the women, when you work in a corporate in New York, you really get paid the same amount when you start
Right.
out.
Well,
And the rest is performance-based.
the claim isn't that in every single job men are getting paid more than women, right? We have examples of specific fields where that is happening. And that tends to be the case more often than vice versa.
I was going to make the joke, wow, what a controversial and, really nuanced topic response here that I definitely want to give. Shane, why don't you go first? You know,
Okay. Yeah. But so, yeah, like I was saying, the claim isn't that in every single job, men are being paid more than women. I mean, where I work, I had most of my coworkers are male because I work overnight as a grocery stocker. But when I did have few female coworkers, they had the same starting wage that I had. One actually had a higher one because she had experience. So I don't happen to work for a company where the gender inequality as far as pay is concerned exists, right? But the fact that it doesn't exist in my company or the company that I work for, not my company, doesn't prove that it isn't a thing in other companies, right? I think what people are saying is that this is a prevalent issue in a lot of fields.
Yeah, and I would be careful, Matthew, because if we're saying, obviously you're looking at your own workplace and you're saying, well, this doesn't apply here. That anecdotal evidence can trick us into, reframing the kind of claims that people are making and the conversation that's really happening. Because
absolutely.
Yeah, and I look at my own workplace and I kind of look at it the same way. But really, again, I think the claim is in specific fields we are looking at it. And there's also a broader commentary on specifically like how it has been historically easier for men to get promotions and like ask for raises in the past because the work environment hasn't been as kind to women in those particular areas.
And there are also a lot of stigmas with women, like, people are going to assume they can't do the job as adequately just because, you have a lot of things like that that interfere as well.
The specific study that people are citing here when they're talking about this, I've looked at it and I've seen other people's takes on it. I'm not an economist, and I can only tell you what other people have told me about it. But, to echo Shane's point, it's talking about specific context variables.
Right.
And it's not,
I can use that same, I could speak to the same point. I haven't had a job where that's been the case, but I do know someone who told me that in his office that he works at, I won't name the company, but all the men got started at like $17 an hour, and there was one woman who worked there, and she got started at like $12.50. And after a few months of her working there, everyone kind of talked about what they were getting paid, like it came up, and they realized that one or two women who started working there were getting paid significantly less, and everybody confronted the boss at the same time. And this usually isn't going to be the case where you have coworkers who are willing to do this, but they said they were all going to quit if they didn't even that out, and they did. So I think it's good to ask your coworkers about what, to what their starting pay when it's appropriate, of course, not everybody. But I think that it's good to kind of establish between your coworkers who's getting paid what, so you can figure out whether or not there's any inequality in those areas. Because in that case, there was. right? But in my job, there isn't, and it sounds like in your job, there isn't. So
Yeah, and there is something to be said. I also want to add as well that people point out, well, what if this is taking account of industries where there are more women that work in them, but they don't get paid as much as an industry as a whole. And like
Right.
whether or not that's actually true in regards to the specific study mentioned, that should raise some red flags.
Right.
As far as why are the women the wages that women get paid specifically for these kinds of industries, the ones that we think of as more like female oriented, why do they get paid less than other ones? And sometimes it's a matter of economics and based on, well, it may be a more a cyclical industry that isn't the same as like transportation or something. Well,
Right.
Actually, transportation is a cyclical industry. I'm more talking about like an exchange, not the raw goods or something, but maybe something that is more affected seasonally and stuff like that. And again, this isn't an economics program. Clearly, I don't know.
Right. I mean, I'm not an expert on economics like he was saying.
Yeah, it's
but
something to think about.
What I have heard when I looked into the gender pay gap is that it's not a matter of like overall male pay in the U.S. and overall female pay in the U.S. It's a matter of per specific job.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So
Yeah. So there you go. That's our takes, Matthew.
yeah.
So, can I challenge a couple of things?
Challenge us.
Love it.
And I agree with all of your points.
Okay.
I completely agree. Like, and to be honest,
Hard to challenge us if you agree with everything.
Yeah, but go on.
Well, go on.
is there not a provision in the legal system that prevents gender pay discrimination?
Yes, but legal protections don't always pan out.
Right.
So I can tell you about something. I won't go into details, but I can tell you some things about my job where people have done some things that definitely weren't
You also
super legally permissible at times, and yet things just happen.
You also have to consider this, Matthew.
Yeah.
If I'm a manager at the company that I work for, and I have if I have one male employee or one male applicant and one female applicant, and the female applicant is more qualified for the job, but I don't choose her just because she's female, there's no evidence that that's why I did it. You only have evidence that I hired the male, and you don't have evidence of why I didn't hire the female.
Yeah, legal.
You don't have there's no way to prove it. And
Right.
it's the same thing with racial discrimination.
Yes.
If somebody isn't hiring people because of their ethnicity, you can't really prove it until the person actually says it. If somebody's just,
Yeah. So and that's the thing. Like, where the legal recourse there, even in these instances, are sometimes so small. It's almost not worth challenging, right? So
Right.
even if we're talking about like wage laws, for example, if you're not getting paid for like one day, right? Like, oh, they missed something, but they're not going to pay you for it. Okay, well, what are your options there?
yeah,
are you
it could just get so hard. Like, you're going to go to court.
Yeah, you have
everything over.
You have to go to court. You have to spend time and money. You have to fight a case on this, and at that point, it's not worth it. So yeah, people can get away with these things in small ways, and I have seen studies that show that every year that there are corporations who steal wages, and the wage theft is a thing from some of the stuff. And that's one example, right? And that's not to say it doesn't go both ways in some cases, right? Like that employees don't take something from the company. But
so
as a corporation, there's responsibilities there that
right. The short answer to your question, even though we already gave a long one,
right?
The short answer would be there are laws, but making something a law doesn't make it happen.
Yep.
People break laws.
Just because it's illegal to be racist to the people that you're,
right.
To discriminate doesn't mean that racism still
happens.
Right? Doesn't mean that discrimination.
It being illegal helps.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it not happen.
Yeah.
People break laws.
It's true. So there you go. What do you think, Matthew?
I agree with that. Second point of that I wanted to kind of talk to about that is, could it be possible that people are misinterpreting a difference in, I hope you remember I mentioned a couple of caveats at the beginning that once you control for a number of things, could it be possible that people are misinterpreting something like, say, for example, a value that's ascribed to quote-unquote traditional masculine characteristics as favorable in a business environment,
Right. So
Yeah.
I almost interrupted you, and I'm glad that I didn't. As soon as I heard you say, is it possible that people are misinterpreting? I almost cut you off and said yes, because it's possible to misinterpret anything, right?
Right. So, do you know about any studies or any maybe data that I can look into that'll possibly, help clear up this thing?
I would recommend
maybe getting rid of some of the confounding factors.
I would recommend looking at a census bureau. That's not going to be your only source, but I would recommend starting there.
In the case
I'm a little bit bigger. We're more into the like supernatural claims and stuff like that.
Here's what I'll say about this.
Discussed, but with this, that's what I can get.
In the case of economic data, your best bet is probably going to be government sources, right? Because journals, there are like bad journals out there for science. In economics, it's worse. There are lots of economic journals that get published out there that are totally fronts that lobbyists pay for to put out think tanks, and there's these agendas that happen, and unless you have a lot of background on the idea of some of these different sources, it becomes harder and harder. But yeah, government sources are probably going to be your best bet when looking at this, and then secondary sources might be. Look at what major publications that you respect are quoting from and looking at. Like, look at the Wall Street Journal, look at the Economist. Major news publications. While there's a lot of people that don't trust the media. There's a reason why they have been established the way that they are is because that they're reporting. 90% of the time they're going to be using more than 90%, but they're using legitimate sources because they know that there is an accountability,
and they know people are fact checking them.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
they know that there are people that disagree with them, waiting for them to get something wrong.
Yeah, and smarter people than us have definitely talked about this issue at length in both of those places. So that's where I would suggest to look.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to look at just raw data is because I've seen people, play with data a little bit to kind of make it say what they want it to say.
Yes.
I'm just a little bit like, I'm a little skeptical if you...
Right, people can totally misuse statistics to make their point.
Especially like people talk about the Koch brothers. Like the Koch brothers have all kinds of stuff that they're paying for as well to promote certain, publishing certain materials to promote like a free market, kind of ideology and stuff like that. That stuff's definitely out there, and it's something you should definitely be aware of.
I'm going to have to steal a joke from Bill Burr, so I don't want to take credit for this, but he kind of talked about statistics aren't the problem, it's the way people use them. Like he said somebody told him, someone was asking him to go snorkeling, and he was like, I'm not going in the ocean, that's where the sharks, I'm going to get bit by a shark. And someone was like, oh, well, 90% of shark attacks happen in shallow water. It's like, no shit, that's where all the people are. That's why the shark attacks are happening there.
Yeah.
So,
It's true. Well, Matthew, I hope we answered a lot of your questions and challenges there. I do want to get to our next caller here, but thanks again for calling in.
It's been a great conversation. Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys. It always helps to bounce these things off of people.
Yeah, totally. And we could be wrong, too.
I'm glad I got a few more points.
So if anybody, if I said something that is inaccurate, let me know in the comments. And if you have sources, that would be appreciated.
Shane's right. He could be wrong.
No.
So make sure that you don't.
Yeah, I'm
fact check Shane.
Do fact check me. If you wanna, Matthew, go back and listen to our conversation. Anything that I get wrong, let me know for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and go to the next caller. Thanks again, Matthew, for calling in. And I hope to hear from you again, pretty soon. See what you find on that kind of stuff. But it is interesting when people kind of bring in other kinds of stuff that I'm not fully prepared to answer.
Yeah. And, neither of us are very into, like, economics or any of that. But I think it's easy to give the basic moral arguments for why, we should have gender equality.
Sure.
But then we also have to discover how we would go about figuring out if someone was getting paid wrong. And it's why I brought up the point of, like, we can't prove that an employer isn't hiring you because of your gender or because of your ethnicity.
It becomes harder to prove and harder to report on all that kind of stuff. But, I looked into this issue years and years ago. There was this was years ago now, but, like, I was almost kind of on an anti-feminist bent a little bit before I came to the place where I am now.
Well, there are extremists in any ideology. I would honestly consider myself feminist myself. I'm compatible with the definition, but I will say that I've had a lot of conversations with feminists that are extremists that make me think, okay, I'm not whatever this is.
Right.
So I guess that's what people tend to call third wave or whatever.
But more to the point with my story is like when I was looking more into this, I kind of ended up turning around. And I realized how much of my biases were playing into that. Some of those biases, by the way, being introduced from Christianity. As far as my views on like men and women and stuff. Because I definitely was not as accepting as like of LGBT people, for and that's specifically was because of a religious value that I held there. But I'm glad that I'm here now. And I've changed my mind on all that stuff, and I can talk to other people about it and see why people think that or don't think that.